The House has resumed. Members, the House is debating the second reading of the Resource Management Reform Bill, and the Honourable Marianne Street has the call. She has 6.5 minutes remaining. Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just before the dinner break, I had outlined the things that I was going to cover, including trees, the idea of a cost-benefit analysis, and the transitional regulations that appear in this legislation. Mr. Speaker, when this legislation first came to the Select Committee, it had very onerous provisions around the identification of trees which were going to be allowed to be protected by local authorities. Instead of allowing local authorities to say trees in this area are protected, or that line of trees over there is to be protected, or in the case of Auckland City, the coastal pohutukawas are all to be protected, the Minister originally wanted in the legislation to name, give a birth certificate to and a christening ceremony for every tree that was to be protected. So the Council in the original bill would have to go out, measure the girth and everything else, identify a tree by a number or a name or who knows what, and say, this is a protected tree. This Jimmy tree over here at this address is to be protected. And we obviously found that to be slightly ridiculous. And I did refer earlier, Mr. Speaker, to the fact that the Minister had made some changes in this respect by allocating, allowing patches of bush to be identified, to allow lines of trees to be identified, but still in all, they all have to be identified by property, by street address or title. And that becomes quite problematic. So right in the middle of this discussion, the heart of this, is individual property rights versus the community environment, whether it's the intrinsic worth of trees in an environment, or as we heard from some of the submitters on this particular area, the fact that a tree next door in Titirangi or up the bank behind you in a steep area in Titirangi in West Auckland might affect one's own property by virtue of the fact that it retains water, it stops subsidence, all of those things that trees are known for, could not be taken into account in a collective way, in a community-based way, in the legislation. Mr. Speaker, there were 99 submissions on this bit about trees, 99 submissions. 67 of them were opposed and 11 of them were opposed in part. So of the 99 submissions relating to trees, 17.2% were in support and 78.8% were in opposition. And still the government proceeds to make what are quite difficult provisions for councils should they wish to protect areas that are treed and wooded. The particular example I come back to again because it relates especially to a couple of members on the Select Committee who live in the area are those coastal pohutukawas as one heads north across the Harbour Bridge. And the coastal pohutukawas ought to be able to be protected as a group without having to be identified section by section, address by address, unit title by unit title. There will be a lot more to say about this in the committee stages, Mr. Speaker. The second thing I wanted to touch on, which I thought was one of the more ridiculous provisions, was the one that the National Party makes a lot of song and dance about, and that is a cost-benefit analysis. The cost-benefit analysis that has to go into applications. So I asked one of the submitters just how they worked out the cost-benefit analysis of a swimming hole in a favourite river. And he said, Mr. Speaker, well, what we would do is have a look at it at the height of the summer and work out how many children use the swimming hole, and then we'd multiply that by the amount that it costs to take them to the local swimming pool, and we would get some kind of cost-benefit analysis. I'm sorry, the man misses the point. The man misses the point. There is intrinsic value, not just monetised value, attaching to the environment. And my concern, and Labour's concern, with this legislation, Mr. Speaker, is that the government is preparing the ground in this assault on the RMA for even worse assaults on the RMA to come in the next onslaught. So this is preparing the ground by taking away some of the fundamental principles underpinning environmental protections and allowing development to rule. Mr. Speaker, the last point I wanted to make was about transitional regulations. The Regulations Review Committee wrote to the Select Committee. The Select Committee considered those concerns in detail and with some seriousness, which I do appreciate from the Chair and the Committee. But still in all, there remain transitional regulations in Clause 124 that I will talk about again at length in the committee stages that give the Minister too much power to alter the primary legislation by subsequent regulation, and that's not how we do things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Nikki Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted